Mary had a little man.
We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream. Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Help is on the way.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
Our chief election and campaign correspondent Robert Costa and Bob Woodward have uncovered text messages between the wife of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas and President Trump's top aide, in which she repeatedly pushed to overturn the 2020 presidential election. Here's CBS's Robert Costa.
The stunning text messages detail an extraordinary relationship between Ginni Thomas and then White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, just after then President Trump started his fight to overturn the 2020 election results.
This is a major fraud in our nation. We want the law to be used in a proper manner. So we'll be going to the U.S. Supreme Court.
The texts are among more than 2,000 messages Meadows provided to the January 6th committee. The first message from Thomas came the day before Joe Biden was declared the winner of the 2020 presidential election. "Do not concede," she wrote. "It takes time for the army who is gathering for his back." Thomas urged Meadows to help the president stand firm. The majority knows Biden and the left is attempting the greatest heist of our history. The messages don't directly reference Justice Thomas or the Supreme Court, but show how Ginni Thomas sought to guide the president's strategy to overturn the election, urging Meadows to make Trump's controversial attorney, Sidney Powell, the lead and the face. On November 24th, Meadows wrote Thomas, quote, "This is a fight of good versus evil." Thomas replied, "Thank you, needed that. This plus a conversation with my best friend just now." It is unclear who Ginni Thomas was referring to. Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas often refers to his wife this way.
"I love being here with my bride, Virginia, who's a gift from God and my totally best friend in the whole world."
Ginni Thomas recently acknowledged she had attended President Trump's rally at the Ellipse prior to the attack, but says she left before Mr. Trump addressed the crowd. Ginni Thomas has publicly denied any conflict of interest between her activism and her husband's work. In the one case heard by the court tied to the January 6 insurrection, they voted to release Trump White House records to the committee. There was only one dissent, Justice Clarence Thomas.
All righty then. Yeah, they don't talk to each other over the breakfast, over the dinner, pillow. No. Oh, of course. All righty then, everybody. All righty. So Ginni Thomas is not only advocating for the overthrow of the United States government and the undoing of the will of the people while she's married to Clarence Thomas, who is part of a party that wants to do away with interracial marriage. Talk about lack of self-awareness. As it turns out, now we know she is just, let's say to the right of the QAnon shaman. No, I'm not kidding. She has apparently been tweeting, and I don't know anybody that follows Ginni Thomas on the Twitter, but apparently she tweets like crazy conspiracy theories. She has like really, really wild QAnon conspiracy theory tweets that are all, I mean, it's almost like you want to call Mike Lindell and ask him to talk her off the ledge. I mean, it is an amazing thing. And of course, the Republicans are denying any accountability or any desire to see Clarence Thomas recuse himself from any of the January 6th decisions that ended up, I mean, this is what will destroy the United States. You understand that? It's corruption. The enemy of the people is not the media. It's not the people who show you this or point this out or, have the production, meaning, they have the evidence, they have the text messages. Like there's 29 of them, and one of them is after the violence, after January 6th. On January 10th, she's tweeting to Mark Meadows about, what a traitor Mike Pence was. I mean, this is after the violence. She was actually at the Stop the Steal rally that day, but she said she left because it was cold. It was cold, and she needed to fold herself into the loving arms of her best friend, Clarence, knowing that the president of the United States had said they were going to the Supreme Court. I mean, this is just so obviously wrong and ethically corrupt, ethically challenged, ethically broken. But KBJ, of course, she must be voted against. She's the problem. She's the threat, right? I mean, it's so unbelievable to me. You know, you want to see, you know, like Clarence Thomas show up at the next hearing if he's well enough to show up at the next hearing. You know, they did release him. He was in the hospital since last Friday with an infection of some sort that required antibiotics, intravenous antibiotics. Now, either it was syphilis or COVID. I don't know. You choose. He was septic. Gonorrhea. I don't know. I have no idea because they won't tell us. And by them, I mean the Thomases. They won't tell us why a Supreme Court justice of the United States of America was hospitalized with an infection for a whole week. Who stays in the hospital for a week? My God, you get a hip replacement. It's like drive-through surgery at this point. You have a radical mastectomy. You're home by, sunset. Holy crap, man, a week in the hospital, and they won't tell us, like, what the hell was wrong with him. But they discharged him today. I don't want to hear discharge and Clarence in the same sentence ever. Just kill me. Just kill me. The visual is just the stench of it. Okay. But anyway, now we have all of this evidence that she was not only in touch with the inner sanctum, oh God, of the Trump's inner sanctum. I'm so sorry. She was in touch with the inner circle of the Trump administration throughout the entire contretemps where Donald Trump was spreading the big lie and she was spreading it too. Oh, sorry. But she's, Mehdi Hassan actually went through her Twitter feed. It's pretty vile. Watch.
What I'm about to show you now is a social media post shared by a prominent conservative activist just before the 2020 election. It shows Hillary Clinton, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, and then Vice Presidential candidate Kamala Harris all shaking hands with people purported to be family members of George Soros.
What?
We blurred their faces because we don't actually know who those people are. And you can see it as a pretty classic example of the anti-Semitic conspiracy theory that Jewish philanthropist George Soros is some kind of secret puppet master to Democratic Party politicians. Quote, who is really running the Democratic Party? ... the Soros family. Quote, George Soros is training his family to carry on his evil legacy.
Evil.
Here is another social media post from that same conservative activist from the morning of the January 6th insurrection, just before insurrectionists stormed the U.S. Capitol. Quote, watch MAGA crowd today, best with right-side broadcasting, and then C-SPAN for what the Congress does. Love MAGA people. And then a little bit later on January 6th, the same conservative activist posted again. Quote, God bless each of you, standing up or praying. Now, you might say, well, it's the kind of bonkers conspiracism that we've had to get used to from the online pro-Trump right in recent years. It's the kind of thing that might have been posted by, I don't know, Mike Flynn or the MyPillow guy or maybe the QAnon shaman. But it wasn't. It wasn't any of those people. All of that MAGA world nonsense was posted by Ginni Thomas, the wife of sitting Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, for decades now, even before her husband was on the Supreme Court.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God. Oh, my God. And, when the case actually went, the document production case actually went to the Supreme Court, and it did, the vote in the Supreme Court was 8-1, and the one who said that a cover-up should actually be maintained, meaning we should never have transparency into what happened ahead of January 6th, the only naysayer was Clarence Thomas. It's true love, everybody. He's just protecting his crazy wife.
all things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, The Randi Rhodes Show.
Lots of people post strange things on social media. Doesn't mean their spouses necessarily endorse or believe those things as well. But Ginni Thomas is not just posting things on social media. Last year, the Washington Post first reported that Ginni Thomas was active in an online forum for former law clerks of Clarence Thomas, where the New Yorker reports she openly fought with Thomas's former clerks about Trump's election loss alongside Trump lawyer and Big Lie promoter John Eastman. Imagine that. You are one of the few people in the American legal community to get the prestigious job clerking for a Supreme Court justice, and the boss's wife is berating you about Trump losing the election. She's also attacked the January 6th investigation and called on Republicans to retaliate against Adam Kinzinger and Liz Cheney for their participation in it, as her husband sits on the court weighing decisions about that very investigation. Which is why no one should have been surprised when the Supreme Court issued its 8-1 ruling ordering the National Archives to hand Trump's records over to those investigators earlier this week. And the one justice who sided with Trump in that decision was, drumroll, Clarence Thomas. What would you say if you saw this in another country?
Really?
A judge on the High Court trying to shield a disgraced former leader from being investigated for instigating a coup, while the wife of that judge attacks the investigators and promotes the lie that spurred the coup in the first place.
Seriously, dude. I mean, I just, what would you say if you saw this in another country? What would you say? You would say, oh my God, the corruption is eating them alive. This is why this country can't get anywhere. This is why the people suffer so hard. This is the, you know, and this is what the right wing has become. This is what the GOP is all about. This is the actual decay of the Republican Party. This is the end of an opposition party. It's so sick. It's so sad. I mean, you have conservative writers today who are writing, like Michael Gerson, that the Republican Party is in complete decay, not decline, but decay, that it's rotten, that there's no there, that it's like a necrotic, oozy, pussy gravy sore of a party. It has absolutely no ethics. It has no ability to process facts or reality. It's totally a propaganda outfit. It lies to its own people. I mean, you got people in this country, this is the crazy part, who make about $40,000, $50,000 a year, okay? And they are the people that are screaming about don't raise the minimum wage. I mean, it's like Stockholm Syndrome gone nuts. Gone crazy. People who are all about election fraud, committing election fraud in full view of everybody and anybody that wants to see what they did, the violence that it caused by lying to people about a fraud that didn't take place. It's so, it's stunning. In fact, Mo Brooks, I don't know if you know this or not, but that Alabama Mo Brooks, the guy who literally wore body armor to the insurrection, the guy who wore body armor to the Stop the Steal rally, he's actually now tattling. He's actually turned on the MAGA group. He's turned on Trump. He's turned on MAGA. Mo Brooks, crazy ass Mo Brooks. Today is the day we write down names and kick some. That guy is now on the phone with Vaughn Hilliard of NBC News, allowing himself to be recorded, saying, that I confess, it was all a lie.
Donald Trump has officially rescinded his endorsement for Republican Congressman Mo Brooks in Alabama's Senate race. In response, Brooks is now coming forward with what he says he knows about Donald Trump's plot to undermine and overturn democracy as we know it. Today, Brooks released a statement saying in part that Trump had asked him to rescind the 2020 election, like put Trump back in the White House and hold a new election.
Oh, my God.
Just now, our own NBC News correspondent Vaughn Hilliard spoke to Congressman Brooks on the phone and asked him about these remarkable claims.
Did he directly tell you to fight to decertify the election, the 2020 election?
He did not use the word decertify. He used the word rescind.
Rescind. What did that mean to you?
Well, I'm a lawyer. Rescind means that you render it null and void.
Oh, my God.
Do you guys have the power to do that in Congress?
No.
and then immediately remove Joe Biden. I guess that would be through impeachment?
Through the rescission of the election results.
Got it. And then did he say that he wanted Congress to immediately put him back into the White House?
Okay, you're using the word Congress.
Yeah.
My statement doesn't say Congress. We never got that far because I explained to the president that what he asked is legally impossible and it violates the United States Constitution, and I'm not going to do it.
So how did he want you to put him back into the White House?
Through a rescinding of the 2020 elections.
Ow.
And then he requested of you to create a new special election for the presidency.
Well, that would be the natural follow-up to the rescinding of the election.
Did he directly say that there should be a new special election for the presidency?
In one of the conversations, he mentioned having a subsequent election for the presidency.
And this was after this Labor Day?
After September 1st of 2021.
Oh, damn. So, everybody talks about how Trump is never going to be loyal, even to the loyalists, and that he will throw them under the bus. And everybody sits there and goes, well, how does that happen? Why does that, happen? Blah, 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 right? Well, here's a perfect example of why you should never get in bed with a piece of dung like Donald Trump, because Donald Trump will actually throw you under the bus when you need him to be loyal to you, even though you wore body armor for him, right? So what happened there? Okay, so Mo Brooks, who's a House member, wanted to run for the Senate. He wanted to run for there's a retiring senator in Alabama, and Richard Shelby. And so he was going to run for Richard Shelby's seat, right? And he's not doing great because the people of Alabama understand that Mo Brooks is crazy. And I think he was in, all the polling had him down in the third place or something like this. So Trump bailed on Mo and endorsed a guy who looked better on paper, polling wise, and threw Mo Brooks under the bus. So Mo Brooks decided that he was going to then tell NBC News what really happened with Donald Trump and him and the GOP and the MAGA crowd around the 2020 election results. And Mo Brooks said that what Donald Trump, and this is, what Ginni Thomas is texting too, that what they wanted, what MAGA wanted, what Trump loyalists wanted, what Mo Brooks was told that he should help happen is to rescind the results of the election, to render the election null and void, thereby triggering a special election for the presidency, another election, a different election. I would assume if it was a free and fair second election, it would have the same results. So something untoward was, going to happen with the fake election. And this is it's not just third world. This is like Russia. This is Stalin. This is like a communist election. This is bizarre. And Mo Brooks is now talking. And Ginni got caught.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
Oh, guess what, everybody? Guess what? We made it. We made it. This is the last day of the Free Speech TV Spring Pledge Drive. It's the last day. Woohoo! Oh, thank you. Thank you. Okay, so here's the thing. So we want to finish big, really, really huge. Today is a match day, which always helps, always, because whatever you do will be doubled, right? You do 20, it becomes 40. You do 40, it becomes 80. You do 100, it becomes 2, and on it goes, up to $10,000. So today is a match day so that we can go out really huge, really big. And when we do, as you know, Sandy, who is a frontline funder in memory of his beloved Storm, who was a sculptress who worked with the indigenous community in New Mexico, and that was her pride and joy. He wanted to memorialize her in a wonderful way. And he thought that donating $10,000 in her name for the preservation of independent media was a beautiful thing. And we tend to agree with him. So thank you, Sandy. We are thrilled that you had this thought about how to memorialize the love of your life and that you chose us to help you do that. So that will be an extra $10,000 on top of whatever we do today. And because it's match day, up to $10,000 will be matched. So thank you, everybody, for helping us get through the spring pledge drive. All you need to do right now is put some money where my mouth is, right? Just dial us at 877-378-8669, which is on the screen right there, or visit us at freespeech.org, or text FSTV, Free Speech TV, to 44321. And we'll send you a secure link. Now, if you choose to give $20 a month every single month, that will be doubled up to 10 grand, by the way, and it will put you in the wheelhouse of being able to get some sort of a gift from us. And one of the gifts that I suggest for that level of donation is the banned book box, because, you know, the freedom people, they're very busy banning books. They're very busy banning books, children's books, and books about history, the 1619 Project. Yeah, Pulitzer Prize winning books, Toni Morrison books. Yeah, they're very busy banning books. The freedom people are. So we'll send you the banned book box as a lovely thank you for your participation in Free Speech TV and our Spring Pledge Drive. So thanks a lot. All right, Greg in Oregon.
Hi, Randy.
Hi, Greg.
I just wanted to take a moment to this. It's Craig with the C, but that's cool. So, I over the last week, I've come up with this observation where the media keeps calling Virginia Thomas Ginny, as if she's like our grandma who gives us Werther's Originals and we crochet with her.
No, that's what she goes by. That is her name.
I know, but that's cool. But her name is Virginia, and she's not our friend. She's an insurrectionist, and I think the media should call her by her name, not her short name that her friends call her, or that her husband calls her.
You know, I had this...
that gives her this idea that she's part of us, and she's not.
You want to shun her, is what you're saying. You just want to shun her, and you should start shunning her by changing the name that is commonly familiar for people to call her. So I had this same, issue with somebody who listens in San Francisco, I think, who was very upset with me because Stuart Rhodes, who is the head of the Oath Keepers, who is a massive violent insurrectionist, who's in a world of hurt right now, that he goes by Stewie, right? And so I was calling him Stewie because that is the commonly used name for him. And he said the same thing you did. No, we have to shun him, and we can't make him, seem like a benign person by calling him Stewie. So you're saying that we need to make her malignant by calling her Virginia. Now, if I thought that calling her Virginia would somehow be an insult, maybe I would think about how we change her name now in, late in life. But it's not even an insult. So,
Randy, I don't like it. There's some decent Virginias out there. Virginia Woolf, Tammy Wynette's real name is Virginia. There's some decent Virginia.
Yeah, but Tammy Wynette doesn't go by Virginia. She goes by Tammy.
No, but, that's true. But
I'm not trying to denigrate her, Randy.
Yes, you are.
I'm trying to say...
Yes, you are, and that's fine. She is, she is anti-American. She's anti-democratic, and she's accusing the elite of being against her. And she's married to a Supreme Court justice. So, just exactly who are these elites? She is bizarre. She's a crazy person, and the crazy person gets to sleep with a Supreme Court justice who's also bat crap crazy and has been credibly accused of being a sexual harasser. So. I don't see why, changing her name is going to make her more malignant instead of Ginny, which in your mind is a benign thing. I never understood this whole change their name thing, but I had it before with Stewie Rhodes because Stuart Rhodes goes by Stewie. And I had the same conversation. No, don't ever call him that. Don't ever. as if their names that their parents gave them, somehow changing them would make them, I don't know, seem less palatable to people, not the actions that they actually undertook to overthrow a legitimate election. She's literally texting QAnon anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, okay? And this is a woman who is in an interracial marriage. You would think she would have some sensitivity about everything ethnic, everything racial, and her party of choice, literally trying to undo the Loving decision at the Supreme Court level with a complete lack of self-awareness that she would be affected by that. You know, I don't know. I don't know what the deal is with the name. Brother David.
Well, an insurrectionist by any name is still an insurrectionist.
Right.
It's fascist free fall Friday, sister.
It sure is.
I mean, she's but one domino. And this is sort of the gift that Vlad the Imploding by default has given us. We can see now how systemic this is and how interconnected it is and how vast it is, which is why we're not hearing from Merrick Garland, because his plate could not be more full in terms of pinning down everything that happened on January 6th alone.
Well, he better actually show up for the fight, because truly, yeah. I was reading the letter that the RICO lawyer that was hired right in New York, that Mark Pomerantz, you know, everybody.
Yes.
He's not just a prosecutor. This guy is one of the most phenomenal RICO case prosecutors, mob prosecutors.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. And
life's work.
Yes. And he resigned from, the investigation in New York because the district attorney there, the new one, Alvin Bragg, doesn't want him to bring the charges against Donald Trump and his family. For fraud, you know, and he literally wrote this letter that ended up in the newspaper this week, but with so much going on, I need to read it, because he's saying, look, he said we have a case beyond a reasonable doubt.
Yeah, and that's how systemic it is and how high up it goes.
Right.
They want to make sure all their ducks are in a row.
It's really sad and sick that somebody can be bought like that, if that's what's going on.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
What really is important about these messages is not the really extreme and somewhat crazy views that Ginni Thomas expresses, like, you know, that Biden and his supporters should be sent to prison in Guantanamo. I mean, it is really, really extreme stuff. But she's a private citizen. She's entitled to her views. What's extraordinary is that her husband, Justice Thomas, remains sitting on the bench in cases directly relevant to what she's talking about in these texts. You know, he, as you pointed out, has already voted once in defense, the only justice in defense of the Trump position, about access to memos about January 6th. There are more cases in the pipeline on this subject. And he has continued throughout his career never to recuse himself in cases in which his wife has been intimately involved as a political figure.
I mean, that is sick and sad. But, you know, here's the thing. This is why Blumenthal was questioning Ketanji Brown Jackson and asking her, when you go to the court, and she will go to the court, by the way, because Joe Manchin said today he's a yes. So we have the votes. So April 4th, she will be voted out of the Judiciary Committee in the Senate and then go to the full floor, and she will be a Supreme Court justice. Thank God. Thank God. We need more people like her. Okay, but that said, so you have Blumenthal asking if when she goes to the Supreme Court, could she possibly talk to her new colleagues about things like recusing yourself when you have a stake in the outcome, or when you have a wife who is involved in the matter that's before you? Or what about some ethics? You know, the Supreme Court exempted itself from any ethics rules. Other judges have to abide by a code of conduct and a code of ethics, not the Supreme Court. This is another, stupid glitch, let's say, in the democratic principles and the actual practicing of democracy in this here country, is that the Supreme Court exempts itself from ethics rules.
The thing that is so extraordinary about this is that, they have the Ginni and Clarence Thomas have talked about, that they are a team. Now, they also say that they do not interfere with each other's work. But, the tradition in courts has been that if a judge's spouse is at all involved in a matter that comes before the court, the judge recuses himself. Now, what's unusual about the United States Supreme Court is that they have exempted themselves from all the ethical rules that other federal judges are abided by. So the Supreme Court operates entirely on an honor system. There is no formal rule for when judges should recuse themselves. But, by any reasonable standard, Clarence Thomas should not be sitting in all these cases.
Duh. And I needed for you to know that because I don't think enough Americans know that. I don't think enough people in this country know that. When we speak about the Supreme Court, and we have been because we had a confirmation hearing that was just off the rails, circus level, clown car, Cruz, Hawley, just Marsha, crazy questions. The way, first of all, the way that we used to, confirm a Supreme Court nominee was to vet them to see if they were somehow ill-qualified, not prepared, didn't have judicial temperament. That was the focus of confirmation hearings, to vet people to see if they were explosive or had, lacked qualifications like the judges that we showed you this week, who didn't even know the rules of evidence, didn't even know what a motion in limine was, which you would need to know if you were going to be a district court judge, because you would need to know which evidence would be allowed and which evidence would not be allowed. You would have to know when to sustain an objection and when to overturn an objection. And these people, these 5 guys that I showed you, they didn't know jack crap about trial procedure, and they were sitting in the Senate trying to get confirmed to be judges in the district court, right? So that is basically the role of the Senate, is to vet those people out of the possibility of serving, right? But now it's become all about ideology. You must agree with me and my policy positions as a legislator in order to sit on the Supreme Court, in order to be a justice who will look at laws only to see if they're constitutional or not. That's it. That's all they do. They don't make policy. They don't decide things. It's so corrupt and it's so bizarre. But now you know that when we speak of the Supreme Court with all this reverence, you need to know one thing about it that you probably did not realize till just now, and that is there are no ethics rules that are binding or guiding even what Supreme Court justices do when it's time to recuse. Now, I will tell you that KBJ, Ketanji Brown Jackson, was asked if she would recuse herself in a case having to do with affirmative action that is being brought with regard to Harvard. Now, she went to Harvard undergrad and graduated with honors, and then went on to Harvard Law and graduated cum laude, graduated with honors, right? But she actually said she would recuse herself from hearing the case because she went to Harvard. Clarence is married to this crazy woman who's been advocating to overthrow the democracy, to overthrow this country, literally, to have a fake, fraudulent special election after Congress rescinds the results because they didn't like the results. She's all about it. And he is actually saying, there's documents that if we don't stop the production of documents in these January 6th cases, oh my God, everybody's going to find out that my wife was responsible for advocating for the overthrow of this government. So you know what? I'll just say no, I'm a no. I don't want the documents to become public because I love my wife. And this is the ultimate, show of love for my crazy wife, who's as crazy as me. And I found, that every pot has its cover, and she's the cover to my cattle. Holy crap. We are so corrupted. The country cannot survive with this amount of corruption in it. You know that. And for the longest time, we've been trying to tell you about dark money and money writing legislation and the groups like ALEC and the Koch brothers and all of this stuff. And the dark money from the Donors Trust and the dark money from Leo Leonard and the freaking Federalist Society, not just endorsing or rooting for judges that they like, but actually selecting them. Selecting them. That's the truth here. This is what Sheldon Whitehouse used his time for.
A lot was said in this room yesterday about dark money by our Republican friends, to the point where one of the headlines about yesterday read, "Republicans hammer dark money groups." And I'll be the first to concede that there is dark money on both sides, and I hope very much we can get rid of it on both sides shortly by legislation. But there is a difference, I believe, between a dark money interest rooting for someone and right-wing dark money interests having a role in actually picking the last 3 Supreme Court justices. Now, how do we know that they had a role in doing that? Well, we know because everybody involved said so. It was pretty straightforward stuff. President Trump said we're going to have great judges, conservative, all picked by the Federalist Society. That's pretty plain. Senator Orrin Hatch, former chairman, was asked, some have accused President Trump of outsourcing his judicial selection process to the Federalist Society. I say, damn right. The co-founder of the Federalist Society said that the administration is relying on the Federalist Society to come up with qualified nominees. And then Don McGahn, who ran the operation for Trump in the White House, said, "I've been a member of the Federalist Society since law school, still am, so frankly, it seems like that role has been insourced." So there's pretty clear and pretty broad agreement that that selection process took place out of the public eye, and it appears to have been informed heavily by dark money interests.
Sheldon Whitehouse is a magnificent bastard when it comes to rooting out the source of corruption. It's always going to be about money in this country, and it's corrupt, and it's ruining the country, and it's literally cheating us.
Mary had a little lamb, We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Help is on the way.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show. Turn up your mind.
The Judiciary Committee has completed its hearing for Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. I enjoyed meeting the nominee. I went into the Senate's process with an open mind, but after studying the nominee's record and watching her performance this week, I cannot and will not support Judge Jackson for a lifetime appointment to the Supreme Court.
Shocking.
First, Judge Jackson refuses to reject the fringe position that Democrats should try to pack the Supreme Court.
What?
Justice Ginsburg and Justice Breyer had no problem denouncing this unpopular view and defending their institution. I assumed this would be an easy softball for Judge Jackson, but it wasn't.
Shocking, everybody, that Mitch McConnell will not be a yes vote to confirm Ketanji Brown Jackson to the United States Supreme Court. Shocking, I tell you, when this is a man who left a seat open for an entire year because he didn't like the president that actually was president at the time the seat became vacant, and nominated a moderate, who we've all come to know, Merrick Garland. I'm shocked. I tell you. He's lying also about the court packing thing. Okay. Court packing is a function of the legislature. The Congress decides how many seats there are on the Supreme Court. That is one of the things that Senator Mike Lee actually acknowledged over here.
Today we're starting the second day of Judge Jackson's confirmation proceedings. There have been questions raised already as to Judge Jackson's willingness or opposition to the idea of packing the United States Supreme Court. That is, passing legislation to increase the number of seats on the Supreme Court of the United States.
I see.
Several justices, including Justices Ginsburg, Breyer, and Thomas, have expressed outright opposition to this, as then Senator Joe Biden did many decades ago.
And recently.
Thus far, Judge Jackson has been declining to answer any of those questions. I do think it's an important issue. It's an important issue that
Mitch McConnell wants you to bring up.
It's not one that could ever come up and be decided by the Supreme Court of the United States, because it's what we call a non-justiciable political question.
Right.
It's set aside as something for Congress, but it has implications for the court, which is why some of us would love to know where she stands on it.
It doesn't matter where she stands on it, which is what she said, which is what Amy Coney Barrett said. When Amy Coney Barrett was asked about court packing, she said, and I quote, "I could not opine on it. I will not express a view on the matter of public policy, especially one that is politically controversial, because that is inconsistent with a judicial role." It's exactly what KBJ said, but for some reason, Mitch McConnell says that is a tell. He's hanging his hat on that. It's not anything that would ever come up to the court because, as Mike Lee so clearly states, he didn't even want to ask about it. Mitch McConnell made him ask about it so that Mitch McConnell would be able to say, this is the reason why I'm voting no, because he has no other reason to vote no. There is no reason to vote against this woman. She has... She showed restraint, she showed grace, she showed brilliance, she showed a complete understanding of what her job is as a judge and what her job will be as a justice. I mean, there's no reason to vote no. And it's the exact same answer that Amy Coney Barrett actually said. So here's the comparison. Coney Barrett said, quote, "I will not opine on it. I cannot share my views. I will not express a view on a matter of public policy, especially one that is politically controversial, because that is inconsistent with the judicial role." Ketanji Brown Jackson said, "Senator," this was to Mike Lee's question because, Mitch McConnell's not on the Judiciary Committee. She said, "Senator, I agree with Justice Barrett in her response to that question when she was asked before this committee. Again, my North Star is the consideration of the proper role of a judge in our constitutional scheme. And in my view, judges should not be speaking into political issues and certainly not a nominee for a position on the Supreme Court. So I agree with Justice Barrett." What the hell is Mitch McConnell lying for? Does he think that people are just so stupid and so lazy and so completely unaware of the previous answer to the same question, or completely unaware that it is a role for Congress and not a role for the Supreme Court to choose the size of the Supreme Court? Paul in California.
Hey. Everybody's talking about the Supreme Court. Packing the court is a really unpopular idea, and the president shows no sign of wanting to pack the court. But there is a simple fix to the court. All we have to do is pass a law saying the Supreme Court has to follow the same rules and regulations that all federal judges do. The Supreme Court had no right to exempt themselves from the rest of the ethics rules that judges have to follow. They took that upon themselves. In the Constitution, it clearly says the Supreme Court shall operate under rules and regulations set forth by Congress. So they claim to be the party of law and order. Put your money where your mouth is. The Supreme Court has to follow the same rules and regulations all federal judges do. McCarthy saying, oh, no, Thomas will be able to rule on matters of law. Well, he proven he can't.
Right. Yeah.
So, I mean, and then that would get rid of Kavanaugh, because that guy's an alcoholic gambler. He needs that money he's making from Heritage. And Thomas thinks he's in the right, so he won't stop. So that gets rid of those two right off the bat.
Well, I don't know that it would get rid of them. We have never successfully impeached a Supreme... Well, we impeached one, but we were unable to remove him, and that was Justice Chase way back in the day. And the reason was because he was too political. And it didn't work. So I don't know that we'd ever get rid of them. But I will say this, the number of districts that we have, district courts, doesn't commensurate with the number of justices that we have. And I really do believe that it ought to. So if you have 13 districts...
Well, we can also go back to rotating them like we used to.
To what?
We used to rotate judges. You sit on the Supreme Court, then you would go to another court, and they rotated.
Who did?
They did the circuit. The United States of America.
We did? We rotated Supreme Court justices?
Yes.
When?
It was not... In the beginning, for a long time, that was the practice, for like almost 100 years.
I don't remember that.
Well, the Supreme Court would sit on the court, and then they'd go and sit on the D.C. Circuit Court, and all the federal judges is rotated. And I forget where I read that, but I did read it, and it was a while ago when I was studying civics, and that was back in the 90s. But yeah, the Supreme Court justices used to rotate.
No.
Yeah, they did.
Well, I don't.
And in fact, I think I remember reading that in the Hidden History of the Supreme Court from Tom Hartman, because that's one of the suggestions that he has for fixing the court, making them go back to rotation.
Okay, well, go feed your dog.
I only read that book one time briefly. Well, that's just my suggestion.
Okay.
You guys got a great show.
My
wife loves your show.
Thank you.
You're awesome. You explain complicated issues to her, and I appreciate you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I don't recall a rotation, but you could sit and spin, but I don't recall going from one court to the other at all, ever. But I could be wrong. In the United States, circuit riding was the practice of a judge, sometimes referred to as circuit rider, traveling to... But does that have to do with the Supreme Court? It's my crack producer sending me long things to read in real time.
All things Randy at RandyRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
Okay, so now I had a break and I was able to, actually dig in a little deeper into what you're saying. No, the Supreme Court never rotated judges. I never learned that. I never heard that. I never read that, and it didn't happen. What you're probably talking about are the circuit court judges. So, oh God, let's do this again. So you have the lower courts. You have the Supreme Court up at the top, right? The Supreme Court, which was created in the Constitution, separate and apart from Congress deciding what the lower courts would look like. Okay? So the Supreme Court is a unique court in the Constitution. Article 3 of the Constitution deals with the judiciary, right? And Article 3 actually sets up a Supreme Court. And then you have the lower courts. You have an appeals court below it, which is where Ketanji Brown Jackson sits, right? She sits on the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals, Circuit Court, right? So what you had at the beginning of the constitutional scheme of American democracy, you had circuit courts created by Congress, and those courts, maybe you saw justices on the district courts, on the circuit courts, go from one circuit to another to serve, but not the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is a unique thing in the Constitution. The Supreme Court it started out with 6 seats, right? That's what the original configuration of our Supreme Court was, 6 seats. And its job was to determine whether or not laws were constitutional. And that was litigated in the very first case you learn, I think, in government class. It was the first case I ever learned. It was Marbury versus Madison, which decided what is the purview of the Supreme Court. And it was decided that the Supreme Court should decide the constitutionality of what the legislature does, of the laws that are passed by Congress. They should have the authority to compare and contrast those laws to what the Constitution intended and design an opinion about whether or not these laws comport with the intent of the founding fathers, right? The lower courts, okay, so you have the Supreme Court, and then below it you have the appeals courts, and then below it you have district courts, right? Those are the trial courts. So when you go to court, you're in a district court. When you go to court, you're typically in a trial court. And then if you don't like, or if somebody disagrees with the procedure that was used in your courtroom, you can appeal it to the next highest court, and that is the Court of Appeals. And then the Court of Appeals actually is something that gets reviewed by the Supreme Court. That's the 3-tiered system we have. The Supreme Court is not the same as the other 2 tiers. Those 2 tiers, they are something Congress has a lot of say over, but not the Supreme Court. So that just forget what he said, because he tried to remember something and he remembered it incorrectly, not with malice or anything, but just incorrectly. All right, Vincent in Nevada.
Yeah, hi, Randy. Love you a ton. Going back to Ginni Thomas and the conflict with Clarence Thomas and all that, doesn't Congress control the Supreme Court? Can't they make laws against things like this?
It's like the last caller when he first started was saying that the legislature, Congress, can actually pass ethics laws, but the Supreme Court would decide whether or not that law was constitutional. And they would either exempt themselves from any ethics law, which they've already done, or they would accept that there are certain ethics laws that they need to comply with, that they need to observe. But that's the way it goes. And whatever the legislature does, the Supreme Court gets to review for constitutionality, right? So that you end up in this endless loop.
I thought Congress set the rules.
Didn't we also think, though, that only people were people and that corporations weren't people? Didn't we always think that? Yeah, until the Supreme Court said, oh, no, corporations are people, my friend. Actually, Mitt Romney said that, but the court agreed that corporations speak. They actually need to have a voice, and the only voice they have is money. And that's how corporations became people in the United States, which has had the most corrupting effect on democracy of anything that the Supreme Court has ever decided, I think, was the Citizens United case, which, by the way, was a sham case that was created by David Bossie, that was created by the Heritage Foundation and the Federalist Society and all this dark money, all of it, okay? Citizens United is a fake front group to have a grievance in front of the Supreme Court to get the Supreme Court to a position where it could weigh in on the personhood of corporations. We all know corporations aren't people any more than money is your child. A dollar bill has no animating characteristic, it can't speak. But they're saying, oh, yes, it can. Oh, yes, it can. And it speaks louder than words. And the only way that corporations can speak is with this, this cold, hard cash. I mean, this is one of the most corrupting influences that Americans of all stripes face, no matter what your viewpoint is, no matter what you believe is right, no matter what you believe is good, no matter what you believe, should happen in this country. It doesn't matter because money is choosing. And that's what corruption is. That's what corruption looks like, sounds like, smells like, feels like. This is why people are so frustrated in the country, because people who have decided that Trump was right and it's a swamp weren't exactly wrong about that, but they were wrong to believe that Donald Trump had any interest in draining that swamp. It was ridiculous. And, Donald Trump just wandered into that talking point, tried it out at a rally, got a big round of applause, and decided he was going to say it over and over again. But he has absolutely no inclination to drain the swamp. The swamp is the swamp because of money. The swamp is the swamp because not only is Congress purchased, not only is the Supreme Court purchased, and now we know because we have, people who care about these things in a really serious way, like Sheldon Whitehouse, who sits there and shows it to you time after time after time, no matter who's doing the nomination. Whether it's Joe Biden's nominee or whether it's Donald Trump's nominee or whether it's George W. Bush's nominee or Obama's nominee, Sheldon Whitehouse is going to be true to the corrupting nature of money in politics. And he's going to use that point in governance where it's a rare thing, like, confirming a Supreme Court justice doesn't happen all that much. So he's always going to use that as a place to tell you why it's so bad, why it's so polarized, why everything is corrupted from the get-go, from the minute you open your eyes to the minute you close your eyes on and put your head on the pillow. America is in the hands of the elite, wealthy, well-connected, moneyed class. And that is what is wrong. That is the thing that's wrong. So what do the Republicans do? They create a culture war. They create grievances against books. Books. And if they don't like the books in the school, why don't they just send their kid to private religious school?
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844. 561-270-3844.
All right, this is it. This is the last time I'm going to ask for the entire spring pledge drive. This is it. This is the last pitch, okay? So if you can, please do. Dial us at 877-378-8669 and pledge some support for independent media, free speech TV. If you do, we'll double it. Today is a match day up to $10,000. So if you gave $1,000 today, it would be $2,000. If you gave $5,000 today, we'd be done. You understand? But freespeech.org will get you in touch with us as well. You can text us at 44321, the letters FSTV, and then you'll get a secure link back. And you can see how close we are to our goal, and you could help us get there because, as you know, when we reach our goal, and I feel really good about it, we will get another $10,000 as a donation from Sandy in memory of his beloved Storm, who was a sculptress in New Mexico who worked in the indigenous community. It was a passion of her life, and he wanted to memorialize her, chose us as the way to pay homage to her. And we thank him for choosing us for that donation. But if we get to our goal, which I'm sure we will today, he'll put the extra $10,000 in. So thank you very much to all of our frontline funders today who are matching donations from anybody and everybody who gives today. We totally appreciate what you do, and we can't do it without you. So thank you so very, very much. This concludes the Randi Rhodes portion of the Free Speech TV Spring Pledge Drive. Yeah, I know. All right, Jackie in Wisconsin.
Hi.
Hey.
I just had a couple things. The first one is the gentleman that was talking about the Supreme Court rotating. They did not rotate. That was actually brought up in 2019 from Senator Sanders.
Yeah.
Because with the imbalance of the Supreme Court, he actually thought that rather than packing it, that a way of getting around a majority would be to actually rotate in.
Yeah, that's right.
Other.
That's right. That was something that Bernie
judges.
Sanders suggested, but it's never been done. You're right.
Yeah. So that's where your gentleman was probably getting that from.
He misremembered. Yeah.
Yep. Couple other things. One, I am a Republican. I come out with that right away, but I do watch. I try to get a little bit of everyone's shows so that I can get different opinions, that I don't just have
good for you
one view. And so I was watching, and even though I find it condescending, I still try to listen for everybody's views. One, with the election, I do live in the state of Wisconsin. There are issues that are still going through the court. It's not going to change anything, and we don't expect it to change anything. But the whole media out there saying there's nothing there.
What are we talking about? The election?
I'll show you.
Are we talking about the election?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Both the presidential, but our recent local elections even. In the city of Green Bay, they have to publicly post when you're going to be counting votes. They started it in the Democratic city 8 hours before it was posted. They have now screwed up the last 3 elections in Green Bay. That's why people don't trust it. It just was in the Supreme Court of Wisconsin. 100% of nursing home people voted in liberal cities, even ones in comas. They're actually going through the Wisconsin court system right now.
Okay, well,
So
good
to
luck
say
with that. I mean, I hope
happening.
I hope that you have free and fair
is
elections.
ridiculous.
Well, nothing happened in the last election that would make Trump the winner. Nothing at all.
I'm not
look
saying
at
that.
the and
I'm
look
just
at
saying
the but look at the
condescension
violence.
That nothing
But look
happened.
at the violence.
It doesn't matter.
It does matter because
there's
look at
violence
the
on both sides.
No, there's
Are
not
you
violence
kidding
on
me?
both sides. You've
Have you
never
been in
you've
Kenosha
never
when it burned to
seen
the ground?
the capital of the United States of America hasn't been attacked even in the War of 1812 that badly.
It's been bombed.
It's
been bombed.
When has it been bombed?
In the 70s.
No, it
Go back in
wasn't.
history. Yes, it has.
No,
wasn't
it
bombed.
hasn't.
Yeah.
The
There was a
capital of the
bomb
United States
inside
of
the
America
Capitol,
was
yes.
attacked by guys
Yes.
wearing tactical gear with walkie-talkies and radios and Blue
That
Lives
was-
Matter flags and
That
beat
was not
police.
in history. Go back in
And
history.
beat police officers because they were lied to, because there was a big lie going around at the behest of the President of the United States. And now we're finding out that the Supreme Court Justice's wife was part of the spreading of that big lie. And the Supreme Court Justice, who's still sitting, ruled as a lone dissenter not to make documents public about what caused that violence. Let's not equate an attack on the seat of government due to a presidential loser telling America over and over, and he's obsessed with it. He still says it. He still has these stupid rallies. Nobody will air them anymore because there's no sense to it. But he still is obsessed with the fact that he lost fair and square, and he did lose fair and square. You had 800 people arrested. You have people pleading guilty to being an insurrectionist. You have people pleading guilty to literally an insurrection.
What she did there really, really bothers me because it's echoed throughout their side, which is, an insurrection, violence, dead police officers. Oh, well, there's violence everywhere. Okay, Jackie, that makes it fine then? It's fine? Because there's violence ever. Get out of here.
There isn't violence like that anywhere. Anywhere. The violence that we saw from the Republican Party this past year, the year leading up to the election, through the election, and after the election was very specific, okay? It was to kidnap Gretchen Whitmer during the COVID era, right? In the election cycle, to kidnap her, to put her on trial, and then to execute her because they felt that their freedom was being taken away because we had a pandemic and we asked people to please wear a mask. And they decided that that was a bridge too far for their freedom. And they decided that they were going to storm the Capitol in Lansing and kidnap the governor, or try or say that they were going to kidnap the governor. They went armed to do it. And the President of the United States said, oh my God, look at this. I could actually make people kill each other. I can do it. I can set one upon the other, and I can actually, create. And he was always at his rallies saying, punch him in the face, take him out. This guy needs to go back to mommy. He said he'd get the legal bills for some old codger that punched a freaking guy in the face. I'll get his legal bills. Don't you worry. I mean, this is not normal. This is not American behavior. This is the behavior of a dictator. This is the behavior of an autocracy. This is the kind of thing that literally Ukraine is willing to die to protect from. Do not equate garden variety criminals with a planned insurrection to overthrow the results of an election. That just won't wash.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
Overnight, Russia continued its bombing campaign, striking a fuel depot outside Kyiv, trying to cut supplies to the capital, and topple the government with a long war of attrition. In Kharkiv to the east, Russia bombed more apartment buildings. As in the city, relatives held a funeral for Boris Romanchenko, a 96-year-old Ukrainian Jew. He survived Nazi concentration camps, only to be killed by a Russian bomb that hit his home. His son said his memory would not be forgotten, even though many of the family's papers and photographs were destroyed. Across Kharkiv, the war is starting to drag on. Many have been living down in the subway stations for a month now. But it's Russia's justification for the war that bothers Natalia. She says she has friends in Russia who believe the Russian propaganda, that Russia is fighting to topple Ukraine's supposedly fascist and neo-Nazi government. I've been sheltering with my child in the metro for a month, and they do not believe me. They say it's your fault. You are to blame. It's you, she says. In non-stop reports, Russian state TV describe Russian troops as liberators in Ukraine, insisting they never target civilians. These are the first images from inside a theater in Mariupol Russia attacked 9 days ago, where hundreds of Ukrainian civilians were sheltering. Covered in dust, they seem dazed. Many are women, children, and the elderly. A narrator on the video says the missile hit the center of the theater and people are evacuating the site. Mariupol city officials citing witnesses claim 300 people were killed in the attack. NBC News cannot verify that claim. The theater is in the center of Mariupol, and it had been clearly marked with signs in Russia saying children to indicate children were inside. Russia denied it carried out the attack.
That's what propaganda leads to. That's what lying leads to. When your government lies to you, when your government tells you that, the press is the enemy of the people, when your government actually decides that, there's one guy who can fix it all, and I alone can fix it, kind of an autocrat steps up to the microphone and twists your mind and brain to the point where you don't believe that he lost an election because people rejected his view, his vision of what America is, and the lie becomes the thing. That's where it leads. That's what happens. This is why Ukraine said we're better off dead than we are living under Putin. And they mean it. They mean it. They will do whatever they have to do to keep themselves free from Vladimir Putin's way of conducting, of handling a country. And I would hope that Americans felt the same way about 300 years of democracy, as flawed as it is, as bad as it gets. And it does get bad. It does. We have, crazy wars and people want to protest those wars. That's what she was talking about, by the way. Our lady in Wisconsin. She was talking about the Weather Underground. But, I just have to explain to you, although I literally think that what the Weather Underground did with violence and, incendiary devices was vile and grotesque, at least they had the decency to call ahead. That's what the Weather Underground did. This is how they were Marxist, by the way. They were a crazy group. And they were protesting the secret bombing campaigns in Laos during the Vietnam era. But they always called ahead when they were going to detonate something, an incendiary device, a bomb, so that people wouldn't get hurt. And to compare, calling ahead with what we saw happen because the president of the United States, a Supreme Court justice's wife, and, like-minded fellow travelers decided to insist that something was stolen from the American people and then created this massive insurrection that we've not seen happen at the United States Capitol since 1812. And that was done by a foreign army. And it was nowhere near as violent as what we saw on January 6th in 2022. You have to become a little more discerning in your compare and contrast moments. Rebecca in California.
Hello, Randy. First time, a very long time.
Ooh.
I know. That's hot. So are you. Hey, I wonder if you remember in 2010 when we found out that Clarence's best friend, Ginni, wanted to reach across the airwaves to Anita and have her consider an apology.
Yes, I remember. Yes, I remember. Ginni Thomas literally called Anita Hill and left a message on her voicemail telling her that, she would hope that Anita Hill would one day apologize to her beloved, to her husband.
Yeah, for what you did with my husband. And then she ended it. She wanted her to give it some thought and pray, and so that she could come to an understanding of why she did what she did. And she ended it, if you remember, okay, have a good day.
Yeah, she's back crap crazy is what she is. And she's dangerous because she is well connected, obviously, with a direct line into the president's office and the president's chief of staff. We now have 29 text messages that are just grotesque. Where this woman, she's advocating for the overthrow of the United States government and telling him to pray with her. And he's writing back to her saying, something about the King of Kings, we'll figure it out. I mean, this is just crazy.
Man, we better get a hold of this somehow. This is just, all of it is overwhelming. I mean, my gut feels it all the time.
I do too.
It's just crazy. And I work with kids. I'm trying to, give them some hope.
Right. Hope is everything. I agree with you. And I just, I think that, if we could actually come up with, some legislation that actually requires ethics in the Supreme Court, number one, and number two, that we ban money in politics once and for all. And then I have these other, subsequent things I would like to see happen. And one of those is if you're going to brand yourself news, then you must actually have an ombudsman, meaning fact checkers, before you just, say stuff. It has to be fact checked. And number two, and certain standards and practices must be followed if you're branding yourself news. Otherwise, you're entertainment. It must clearly say that. And then the other thing that I think will go a really long way, considering the big lie and how many people fell for it, is that if you are using your official office as anything, a local, a state congressman, a state senator, a federal congressman, a senator in the United States Senate, president, whatever, if you're using your official office, you're under oath. You're under oath. No lying. I just think that would go a long way for America to be able to orient itself to what is real and what is unreal and to self-govern in a much better fashion. Fred in Wisconsin.
Yeah, I'm following up on that other caller from Wisconsin because I have no idea where she got that information from that supposedly 100% of nursing home residents voted.
No, there were 12. There were actually voted. 12 residents of the nursing home she's talking about. There were 12 people in it.
Yeah, well, her source for that information is not a trustworthy individual. It's Michael Gableman, the guy who
the crazy judge. That's right.
Yeah, the guy who believes that there is a legal means to rescind our electors, which there absolutely is not.
And he's a Supreme Court justice, okay? I mean, or is he ex? He's ex, right?
Yes, he's former, yes.
Right.
Yeah, it's disturbing to think that he ever served in such an important role.
It is.
But now we've got some wackos in his place. So, but thankfully, the one that they thought was going to be a reliable conservative has actually been more moderate. So that's actually kept us from having some worse outcomes in Wisconsin.
Doesn't conservative mean moderate? I mean, shouldn't it?
It should. In this state,
no, I know.
Thankfully, we haven't seen the extremes of Florida and Idaho and whatnot.
Yeah, our governor signed that bill into law banning books, literally banning books. Now, he says he's doing it to give parents, the option to review the library. First of all, you should only hope that parents are that involved in their kids' education, okay? Teachers for eons have been saying, God, I wish I could get the parents to become more involved in their kids' education, but they're just not. They're busy. Okay, I get that. So that's just misdirection. But also, if you don't like what's in the public library, if you don't like what's in the public school library, then shield your kid by sending them to a religious private school and get it over with. Or, listen, a lot of this is the result of homeschooling by parents who are undereducated themselves. We've got this self-perpetuating nonsense, and it is clearly a disservice to children and our future because they are the future. Have a weekend. Thank you for your support this week. Thank you.